Hello and welcome to episode 195 of the Imperial Truth Podcast. I'm Greg, and joining me as usual is Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. How you doing? All right?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Just feels like we've turned a corner in the new family experience. So it means I've got been able to turn my attentions to trying to get a bit more balance and a bit more hobby time in, and quite a good time for that to happen as well.
Yeah,
Fortunately, but
until
it's still fairly challenging.
until you hit a regression and
Yeah,
and then
yeah, exactly.
go back
This is
on
a
either
life
kid, on
a
either
life
kid
a
as well.
life reprieve before they decide that's going to turn around. But yeah,
Yeah,
overall, not bad at all.
awesome. That's what we like to hear. Before we get into anything, Element Games for all your hobby needs, for your lighting solutions, for your paint solutions, for your brushes, your glues, your models, your board games, your magnets, your whatever it is to do with the hobby. Chances are you can get it from Element Games. I don't know that this episode's going to go up before UK Games Expo. Depends on how much time I've got. But I'm heading up there. I think they've got quite a good presence there. Element Games are going to a festival. Radar Festival they're going to be at. I've never heard of
Okay,
Radar
good
Festival.
choice. Okay.
Um, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Like to hit an audience. I wonder if it's an event by musicians for musicians. I don't know who these people are, but they have masterclasses in music and gaming and hobby. It's one of those kind of all-encompassing kind of festivals, which is cool. So they're setting up there. So if you are into your music or you are already heading to Radar, you can find Element Games there. They're getting everywhere, aren't they? Now they're in Nottingham and Sheffield, isn't it? Birmingham, London. Um,
Yeah, they've got a
yeah,
presence.
doing
They're doing really well to have that kind of presence all over the place. Oh, good on them.
for sure. And alongside that, obviously, Byron's linked in with Artist Opus, and they're also involved with. They're involved with the Cult of Paint new paint line, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I was talking to Henry about that. Asked him about it because they're still in progress, but are not far away. I understand they're going to do a paint range, and it'll be very interesting to see how they do that and how they differentiate. Yeah.
They had a load to show off at the MPO, didn't they? At the model painting competition. So
Yes, which was yes, what was recently was it last weekend, I think.
yes,
Cool, yeah. It's apparently yeah. So they're there. They have examples. It just hasn't hit retail yet. And I think that's
yeah,
a collaboration between Artis Opus and Cult.
Artist
So
Opus,
that
yeah,
will
massively.
likely be uh, available through Element, if not exclusively.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it'd be exclusive, but because you just want to get it out there. Who knows? Who knows?
Mhm.
Maybe we can get Henry on to chat about that. Actually,
That would be
might
good.
not be a bad idea. Been chatting a little bit with Henry about the stuff we're going to chat about now. This episode. So yeah, Element Games alongside Artist Opus doing all kinds of good stuff. So go and check them out. If you're going to buy from them and you like our show, you can use our link in the show notes or in my link, whatever you call it, list of links that I've got.
Yeah.
Link tree, that's the one on my profile on social media, and they we get a little kickback off anything you order there, and we've also got in there we've got listed both our element codes as well for extra
So yeah.
points. So yeah, if you're feeling um, super supportive for us, then you can do that as a good way of helping us pay for hosting and all those kind of things. Awesome. Okay. Have you been up to any hobby?
Sort of. Yes, I've been working out. So I've got a bit of an Allegiance Imperialis bug at the moment. I
All
mean,
right.
that might be because is not likely to have any significant overhauls in the coming coming month or two. So I have got my head into that a little bit and have been building quite a bit of the backlog where I can. And I'm currently looking over at a quite a large number of tanks and infantry that are starting to accumulate. I went sort of a weird one where I'd been building it at different times, like when we'd gone away for a weekend or something, and I'd grabbed 5 minutes here and there. So I ended up having these sort of little tanks hidden around the house It's just in separate boxes. So I sort of brought that
Mm.
all together and discovered actually I built quite a bit. So I'm trying to organise that into some little armies so that I can have some ready to go games for people to play. To say invite them over, try the game out, and go from there. Really. So I've started with build the formations of legend, as they are, the
Yeah,
grandly titled formations of legend from the Devastation of Talarm book. So it's an Iron Warriors heavy assault force and an Alpha Legion Harrow force, I think it's called. Um, Lots of tanks and tiny infantry. So yeah, those will probably get on the painting table if and as and when I can get them undercoated. But yeah, I've been experimenting with those really. So tiny tanks, tiny planes, tiny infantry, and trying to organise those and spending quite a bit of time in the excellent Legion Builder list building app, which is a web app thing that lets you just tweak that because there's so much flexibility with those force organisation chart things that you get, the formations that you get in Legions. And very
yeah.
helpfully, been getting some advice from the guys on the London Wargaming Guild chat. They were giving me pointers about might work and what perhaps is a little harder to get to work. I'll try to keep them broadly thematic. What about yourself? That's what I've been up to.
So I have built some models for
Hello,
Heresy,
hello.
which can't really talk about, but there are some models built, which is cool progress.
Oh,
I so in my Age of Sigma army is Mega Gargants, and they're quite a frustrating army. So I was like, right, I need to get my Cities of Sigma army up playable, um, and I'm trying to put together everything I own for them, which is only about 1,600 points, unfortunately. So I've finally got the work hobby solution, which is the top of my Leviathan 40k box with throw in whatever I'm building and necessary tools, and take my Lumi portable lamp with me. So in the van, when I have to pull over and have my lunch, I can hook that up onto my. It's not quite big enough in the van to do it, but it's a little bit awkward. But I can build some models while I put something on my iPad or what have you to watch. So that's cool. Also, having been told firmly no, I can't hobby in the front room. I've also taken that box into the front room whilst we've been watching stuff, and it's not been a problem. So it looks
oh,
like I can manage a
enjoying that
little
you.
bit of that.
I'm enjoying that you said that with a slightly hushed tone.
Yes, yes, yes.
Just
Let's
saying
not push it.
it's possible, but let's not get too carried away.
Well, Eurovision was on the other day, and we did sit there, and I think Emma fell asleep just after the UK's entry, and I was hobbying, so I just didn't move. So let's
Yeah.
get some stuff built. So that's good. Unfortunately, GW decided to drop a trailer for Horus Heresy and release the Space Wars about the same time that I also need to go and buy some Cities of Sigmar stuff. So I've pre-ordered the Space Wolves. I'm going to have to build and paint a lot of stuff, and we know that I don't do that very quickly. So I'm going to have to try and get a bit more organised to do all that because Space Wolves got loads of their own stuff now as well, and Heresy's going to have all this new stuff. So progress, but slow progress,
It's pretty positive
which
though.
isn't. Yeah, it could be worse. Could be worse for sure. So yeah, I think the little the work solution might do. I mean, I'm very slow at building stuff, so it's only a handful of models, a couple of models every day or whatever.
As
Um,
our mutual friend Michael has said on many occasions, it's amazing what you can end up getting done if you just sort of commit to that half an hour even a day, and suddenly that adds up. And if you're doing
I
that
mean,
with that work van solution, I think that could end up being surprisingly productive.
well, everything's um, relative, right? Because I'm very slow. But hey, you know, it's better than not doing it, I suppose. That's what you got to think about. So I just got to try and get some find some opportunity to get the models that I built sprayed and get them painted quite quickly, hopefully. Who knows?
When
It's
is the
just,
event
yeah.
that you're attending?
There's not for an event, but
Okay.
it just need to be sprayed and painted. And then moving on to the next thing, because I want to clear the schedule for,
Yeah,
well, I want to
fair.
get, because these space walls are arriving, and then I want the schedule cleared for building and painting some heresy. So it's all a bit like, and for most people it's not a problem, but for me it is. So yeah, I don't know. We'll work on something. Something will work, I'm sure. What could go wrong?
It sounds entirely achievable.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I was going to use my lunch breaks for like reading and stuff, but no, that hasn't happened. So I've
I
still
think you
got
could
like
like
idle on to
self-improvement
read.
thing. Yeah, actually, I haven't.
I've started idle.
Hmm,
Yeah, I've started it twice,
maybe.
and then got distracted for long enough that I was like, well, might as well restart it. So hey, I'm sure I'll get back into the reading bug a little bit at some point. But like the weekends are getting busy. Like UK Games Expo Saturday, hopefully. Need to buy my ticket actually. And
I'm
then
very very envious of that. I think that's going to sound should be good fun.
yeah, hopefully. I mean, I'm only going to be there one day. I've not been before, so there's some people I want to see. I know it's big, so I've got to try and maybe sit down the day before and plan it out a bit. But if you see me Friday, I'll try and wear an Imperial Truth T-shirt, and then yeah. Then if anyone can sees me, they say hello. There's a few like Insta people that I can imagine trying to find someone there being quite difficult unless you're specifically meeting up. But
Yes.
there looks to be some good people going, so we'll give that a go. Yeah. And have you got plans going into the next month, hobby wise, or is it just more of the same?
Uh, there's certainly now. This is why I wanted to get some lists done. I find if I'm working to a list, that gives me a focus that
Sure.
means I might actually get it done. If I'm just generally doing it, it might be, oh, I've wanted to do that model for a long time,
Yeah.
but and then you sort of do that one thing, but it being done in isolation, I just don't enjoy that way of doing it really. So I try to work to a list if I can, more or not for an event or anything like that, just because that's how I quite enjoy focusing what I'm working on. So now that I've got those, I've got two 2,000 point lists. An Iron Warriors one and a Alpha Legion one. So if I can get those done, and there's even the possibility of actually playing some games, which would be nice. We will see if
Yeah,
that
for sure.
transpire, if that's possible and transpires. But just with the with the family schedule being what it is, at the moment, with an 8-week-old baby, that's not terribly straightforward to get home in time and meet all those commitments. But if I can, then I'll maybe get some games in. So yeah, so for the next month or so, I might try and race to get those finished before the big heresy floodgates open. And I'm sort of quietly spending some time thinking about what I might do to see what I might do with I mean, for example, what might suit the Mark II, for example, that's on its way. So there's some thoughts starting to formulate there. But if I can get those Legions Imperialis models finished off, I'll be very happy just to have some armies ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah, because again, I've got to we're gonna get that Siege of Terror short story compilation thing
Yeah, because if I
out at some point
recall,
soon.
Amazon said that, or according to Amazon, that's going to be out. Well, Amazon pre-orders of the regular hardback are back end of June,
Right.
allegedly.
Yeah.
Where
So
the
I wouldn't be surprised if it drops the same time as the box set.
sort of
Um,
makes sense, wouldn't it? That's kind of logical, but whether or
yeah,
not
it may do, may not. But yeah, so I need to get some reading space free for that as well. Cool. So there's lots of stuff going on. So that's awesome. Right. Shall we leave that there, and then we're going to change things up? The news is the topic. So we'll come back, we'll talk, and we'll see what happens for this one. It's going to be a little bit more up in the air. Righty ho. There's a lot happened in the last month. We finished recording, and I'd just about edited the last show when GW dropped on us the Horace Hearsay website, and we had a little discussion like, are we going to record? And then it didn't happen, and then actually, I'm quite glad it didn't happen. Because everyone jumped on it, and B, it was clear that it was going to be, it was going to carry on. So now we're at the end of this, Horace. Let's start with the Hearsay website. What did you make of it? There's a lot. I was not necessarily surprised by the reaction, because we see that whatever happens, people don't like things and get angry at GW. But I was a little bit taken aback by how many people really found it offensive.
I agree with that. I was surprised at that. I mean, I was quite taken with it, actually. I thought, yeah, cool. I see what you're doing. I'm here for it. I get the joke. It took me a moment or two to realise it was genuine. When I first saw it, I thought this could be when you're first glancing at it, but then fairly quickly there was some fairly obvious tells that it was a genuine thing that they were doing as an exercise. I've seen
It
various.
says it's a total 101% legit Warhammer website. I don't know what you mean.
Sorry, what else could there be? Yeah, how could it possibly be anything else? Yeah, like you, there were particularly some takes I saw quite a bit after it was fairly established. It was before the preview, but people were still talking about it at that point, and it was surprisingly negative. Actually, I thought saying that it was yeah,
Patronising was the one.
offensive is an interesting word, but it was borderline that, which I was surprised that people took it that way. Like you,
Yeah.
I didn't think it
I,
warranted that.
I get there's a frustration because the book had been revealed. The box had been not revealed but leaked. But any company is going to want to control their information line. We know with GW, we know that they have set dates. Like they ignored the second edition box for what, 8 months, 9 months. It was out. The photo was out there, and they just made no allusions to it whatsoever. We know that's how GW work. Yes, they will often respond to a leak, but if they're not ready to respond, if the timeline doesn't work out, then they won't. So this, for me, I don't know if this was planned. This is all the kind. I mean, it seems a lot of work to not be planned. That we've had we had a leak, and they've immediately responded with a tongue-in-cheek kind of look at, oh yeah, is this real? Is it not real? I don't think it was ever serious in that respect. It was obviously there was poking fun at some of the kind of rumors that I've heard, but I don't think it was ever done insensitively.
No.
And also if like stuff's going around online, it's like it's open for that. Like I've heard they're doing this. Like people will take the mick out of each other, but all of a sudden it's not okay when GW does it in a
Yeah,
very mild manner.
yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was. I've quite enjoyed those before. I think it had the tone. I think when they tend to do it right is when it's a slightly knowing, when they almost sharing in the joke. They're making reference to the things, the same sort of tropes and jokes that people make. Now you could argue that perhaps some of them went further. It went to a sort of were a bit trite, perhaps, but say that they're patronising or something like that or insulting. I think it's a
Yeah,
strange interpretation of it.
I think I'd understand it more if it wasn't. a lot of these people weren't English. I think
Mm.
sometimes there's a sense of humour. Kind of, we're self-deprecating. We're quite dry compared to a lot of other countries' humour, but but it wasn't. It was a lot of English. It just that was a real curious one for me. I think actually it's quite. I think it was quite a clever idea as well, because it acknowledged the leak without ever confirming anything,
Mm.
whilst also if we look back, like D18, obviously very photoshopped, looks naff. Like it was like, I'm not buying that one. The foot, well, we've seen that leak. Okay, cool, could be right. Oh look, push fit heresy. Well, very quickly it was deemed to be. People worked out that was a different sprue. Um, Things like the objective markers. I was like, yeah, cool. I can see that. The what's turned out to be the teleport synchronizer. Yeah, flame weapons. One day they're staying the same. The next day they're you know um, being made smaller and whatever. Okay, cool. That's an obvious like dig at conflicting rumors. So ignore that. And then some stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe they do change bolters to strength 3. Not sure they would, but they could do. Um, so it got people talking about the what's coming without giving anything away too much, um, whilst maintaining maintaining a bit of a presence, which is what they want to do. Like they're not they're not going to show you the stuff until they're ready to show you the stuff. What else? I suppose this is what I mean. They had a set date for showing us the thing. That may have changed and what have you. But do they just sit silent between the leak and that? Because then all the fans do is say, "Well, we know it's coming. Why aren't you talking to us?"
Mm.
So, how do you want Games Workshop to tell you what they want to tell you without, you know, whilst maintaining the fact that they need / want to do their preview at the same time? Apart from saying the box is real, we're going to show you. But let's face it, that's like telling Magnus that there's power in the warp. He's not going to go, oh, cool, yeah, I trust you to tell me when you want to tell me. People will just be
Anyway.
hounding them. So, you know, I, I don't think they can win in any way, shape, or form on that. I think this was a decent compromise on how to go
If I
about it.
if I
Like
get
some of them were obviously fake, but
yeah, carry on.
yeah, some were obviously fake, and some you could believe, and some, oh, cool, it wasn't real. Okay, you know,
I
fair
thought,
enough.
I thought thinking through the timings, didn't the Horace Hearsay website come out before the leak hit?
Yeah, I think it was just
A few
after.
days. I think it was a few days before, like 1 or 2 days, and then the leak happened via Facebook, I believe, and then the Hearsay website was updated as it was doing this daily update
Are
to
you sure?
include references to the box in the same tone that they were already doing things. In which case, because I feel like there was enough preparation, particularly that little video that they did, it felt like there was enough preparation. That's
Oh yeah,
what it
I
should
think
have been done in
yeah,
a reaction. I feel like it was planned, and then
yes, yeah, I'm with you.
a
Sorry.
reaction to a leak was sort of
Yeah,
folded into that plan. Fair enough, and I think I sort of acknowledge that. It would have been fascinating to see how it had been received had there not been the leak.
well, yeah, true. I mean, from what I gather, like they know this. They know there's very little chance of this information staying, um, secret until the time they want to can do it anymore. So it was kind of like, it'll be good to have these things ready to go. Obviously, if there's a leak, they don't know exactly what format that leak's going to take. That could have been someone breaking sprues out or what have you. Um, I, there was someone on a website, on a Discord channels, who said that the area where the warehouse is kind of well known for staff stealing stuff and putting it online, and like they immediately were like, yeah, that's the car of someone who works in that kind of place. Is like there's almost a type for it. Um, you know, I so yeah, I just don't see why any company would ever leak like that. Any of these big companies who want to be seen a certain way. So, it, you know,
No, I agree.
GW's.
I don't think that would be a deliberate thing. I think if you do a deliberate thing, it would have been through the hearsay website. It would have been more obvious that way. I think it was too convoluted to have gone that way. That looked genuine. I mean, it really did look like exactly as you're describing, like that's fallen off the back of a truck kind of thing. That looked like a genuine leak of
Yeah,
that.
because you run the risk of, as you do with this, a lot of people are like, I'm out. I don't like those Saturnine. I don't like the Dreadnought. Don't
Mm,
like the characters. Like, yeah, I'm gone. Where actually, once they had better photos, we're like, oh no, cool. So you do risk people kind of reacting very passionately and then having to pull them back in, which doesn't always work. So yeah, it just doesn't make much sense to me to do that.
no, I agree.
What was interesting was at the Dallas Open, there was supposed to be a preview show on the Thursday. And that preview show was cancelled. They sent an email out and they changed their ticket, and it was actually turned into a um, come play, open play. They had computers there apparently with like Space Marine multiplayer, multi-screen games going on. You could pre-register for the Games Workshop events for the Saturday and some other bits and pieces. I think you could also talk to some staff about the paint and things like that, which, if that wasn't planned, is a pretty quick, decent
Yeah,
turnaround.
yes, it is. Wow.
Whether, I mean, we don't know. Would that have just? Well, we don't know because they hadn't even got to the point of telling us what was going to be on show at that preview.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been what we saw. Uh, what's really interesting then is the fact that Eddie and Adam weren't at Dallas doing that; they were
Mm,
back at home. So, if they were supposed to be in Dallas, right, did they cancel that whole trip because of that? Like, I mean, it seems maybe they did, but that's a big change in things. I actually, aside from all the heresy stuff, I kind of like the idea of fewer of these previews, but being an event and having that time to pre-register and do some funky stuff. I think that's possibly a really cool thing to do for them, Vegeta.
yeah.
Because the previews don't always go down well, and as I said, I think there are too many previews through the year anyway. I think they
Mm,
lose something within having too many of them. But either way, we had the counter, which was for the 29th, which then got brought forward. So, uh, a Friday evening preview. I mean, we did have the Skulls event on the Thursday, so maybe did they just want to avoid a clash of that, or was it changed and then they thought, oh, we better not do it the same day as Skulls? I don't know. It's all a bit. We'll probably never know, but
no.
it's interesting. Um, yeah, it was really weird that we got like on the 29th and then it got brought forwards a whole week,
Yeah.
um, which
I was
could have been an
surprised.
error.
I was surprised they did that. I thought they would probably stick to their guns a bit more than that, and but clearly they decided that they needed to, as it wasn't that big a difference, no, a week's difference rather than months of difference. Yeah, fair enough. I'm quite glad they did, just because I'm greedy and would have wanted to see it sooner rather than later. Um,
Maybe they gave themselves the time to get something organised. It took less time, and say maybe it was an error from the
yeah,
start. I don't know, but interesting stuff.
yeah,
Anyway, I honestly think it's one of the best previews they've ever done.
Wow. Yeah, it was excellent.
It was, yeah, okay, it's one game system. It's definitely the best preview that Heresy have ever had. As a singular preview, I think it was what we expect plus quite a lot more in terms
Yeah.
of presentation, in terms of um, what they showed us and how they showed it, and also uh, they seem to have nailed now these shot at Nottingham previews where they're getting the questions reviewed. They're not trying to do it themselves. There's a lot more control there, and they can guide what they're doing. I think it really works.
Yes.
It really works.
I think they got the right
Right.
presenters across it as well. I think
Yes.
that they seem to be the right people to be doing that.
Mm, for sure. I think Eddie's extremely good
Yes, he's got a
at what
style.
he does.
I've warmed to Adam Troke doing it as well, particularly having been in the room where he's doing it, and his skill with that has been quite impressive.
Live is definitely something on that one. Okay, so how are we going to go about breaking this up? Should we deal with models first? I think that makes sense. So we've seen the whole box now. Should we start with the Mark II?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what order they did it in. It should sort of orderly follow, but
Oh yeah, I'm
okay.
trying to look. I think
Uh,
they did start with the Mark II, didn't they? They went big.
yeah,
Yeah, they did. They start with the Mark II. Yeah. What do you think of the Mark II?
I I don't have. I never had the quite affection for it of the marks that it seemed to degenerate with a lot of people. I think it's cool, but for me, some of the other marks, three, four, five, particularly, were more to my taste and more iconic for me than the Mark
Sure.
II was. However, I think the execution of it, I prefer it to the versions that we saw previously. I think the execution of this, I think, is more to my taste considerably than the versions we saw in its sort of first version in resin, the Forge World resin versions. Somehow I feel like the engineering behind these just lends itself to it. It's got that heft to it. You could argue it's closer to its sort of immediate um, successor in the Mark III.
Right.
I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's got a sort of brutality to it, and I think it sits
Mm,
well amongst the others. It's distinct while still evoking that kind of slightly baroque feel.
sure. I really like the fact that it looks like I don't have to glue two halves of one piece together, and
Yes.
there's no shoulder pad. The backpack looks fine. Like that's a big thing for me. What do you? How do you feel about? Obviously, we've got what we've got: Mark Six, Mark Three, Mark Two in the big end.
Hmm.
How how do you feel about only having those five poses across
I'm okay with
all?
it. I'm okay with it. I've increasingly come round to, and this is probably a function of diminished hobby time that you can commit to something. I'm okay with fixed poses like this because I still think there's enough variety that you can introduce with those components that are free to move. Just swapping arms between the
Sure.
models, I think, gives you enough variety of pose, particularly when you've got relatively large numbers, squads of 10 and 20 here. It's just not an issue at that level of There's level of similarity, the level of adjustability that you would achieve by having them not be in these fixed set of poses. It's such a minuscule effect when you're looking at it as an army. I, I do not mind it at all, and the increased utility of them being able to have these weapon sets and similar that all work in the same way with hands and things. The increased ease of modelling, I think, is utterly worth the move away from that truly free to pose kind of alternative, if that indeed is the alternative you're thinking of.
I think I agree with you. The fact that you only have to buy one set of heavy weapons
Yeah.
to make these guys work, as well as third, as well as sixth, Mark 6. I think it's worth absolutely worth any loss of individuality, because, as you say, most of the time you're 3 foot above the table. If you are going to be, if you're the kind of person who really wants to get down to individuals, then there's stuff you can do. Like, if you're a better hobbyist than me, there's stuff you can do to differentiate them a little bit more. But yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I'm just not that bothered. We'll get onto something else that people didn't like that really doesn't bother me later on, which I might be much more in the minority on that one. What do you think about the new disintegrators?
I don't love them. Again, it's a sort of I think I'm all for. I think the reference is generally to that era. If you call it a reference back to a sort of Rogue Trader era and aesthetic,
Mm,
is cool. It's more a case of looking at them and thinking, yeah, fine. They don't excite me. It'll be
yeah,
interesting. With that said, I think that will only happen when one sees the rules for them and how and what kind of role they take, and what are they and how do they differ from the sort of range of special weapons that one already has. I mean, yeah, cool, kind of slightly
they
bizarro,
def
steampunky feel to them. Fine.
they definitely don't feel like 40k weapons. They
No.
definitely feel out of place with Space Marines, which they should, because we know of we're thinking of Space Marines of a certain era,
Mm,
and these weapons are, of a slightly different era, really.
mm,
But yeah, there's definitely an old school vibe in there
mm.
and an otherness to the weapons, which, I say, I think I'm probably with you a little bit. Like, aesthetically, yeah, cool, whatever. But I think it works quite well for what the weapons are.
Yes.
Um,
I
they
think
feel very different.
if I was going for that sort of other look or to have some variety and arm them with something. I sort of feel like special weapons do that. When I say special weapons, I'm talking melter, plasma, flamer, etc. Um, and actually I would probably go for a Volkite. I think sort of Volkite armed guys, and them being this sort of earlier iteration before the bolt gun became ubiquitous is appealing, and that's probably where this is going to go in terms of that. I mean, it sort of suits the look of the Mark II, being this slightly archaic looking almost experimental
Yeah,
feel. But yeah,
I'm not sure it does suit the look of the. I still think it feels like, yeah, specialist weapons are one thing, but special weapons feel 40k, 30k,
mm,
40k. These and Volkite to a lesser extent don't feel 40k and don't really feel even 30k. I think we've got kind of accustomed to them, but I
yeah,
do think
maybe
they
I would
look
have said
different, and maybe
I would say the Volkite is very 30k, but these, yeah,
is that because we've been around them for so long?
probably, yeah.
They're very different. Um, so I don't know.
As an
Maybe,
aside, I'm looking
maybe
at the
not.
Mark II samples that they've got on the Walk-On website for the drop site, and the helmets of these. I wasn't keen on the helmets of the Mark III as a
Right.
development of the Mark III plastics that we had before. The previous Mark III helmet I felt was superior, and I like the look of that on the current Mark III the rest of the Mark III, the current Mark III model. I didn't feel like that head's fine in the new one, but I just didn't think it was as good. Here, I think the Mark II head works a treat on these ones. I think it suits the way they've done it. Iron Warriors was an ideal choice. I think that armor suits that color scheme particularly well. And I thought it was cool in the preview that they went through all the color schemes. Well,
Yeah, very much
all the
so.
classic color schemes, should I say?
Yeah, there was some really cool uh, versions on that. I'm just looking back through the Volkite. I think there's enough there to make them feel just that little bit different. They are closer to plasma, which is fine. Okay, cool. But yeah, no, definitely going through all the different. Certainly, the white scars shone out for a lot of people. I really like the way the Space Force looked in the colours as well.
Mm,
But yeah, Mark II, big thumbs up. I think they're cool models. I think they suit walls. I love the helmets on Mark II.
mm.
Bit more to paint, but there we go. It's all gravy. What about the Centurion?
Uh, Almost the sleeper hit of the set. I was not expecting the Centurion to be as good as that model instantly kind of was, and I thought, yes, fabulous. The helmeted head is bizarre in all the right ways. I mean, it looks
Very
very
Blanche.
cool. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yes, good call. I agree completely. Um, I think that's quite a bold choice, and I think it's all the better for it. Yeah, love it.
Mm.
I think that's a superb model, and I think it's got a lot of that what we were touching on with the Hall of Fame character aspect to it, where I could see it being used. I mean, it's specifically
Oh
of
yeah.
that nature where it's a generic one that could be used everywhere, and I think that sort of it nails it for that. The example I was giving before were those named characters that were typically then remade into people's own versions of things because they were so ubiquitous. Whereas this, as a generic one, I think they've kind of nailed it with that. Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, I think yeah you've got yeah another character that's going to be used a lot here. There's a fair bit of bling on him in terms of
Mm.
the what are we calling those? Because they were used for the solar, the circular like trophy medal type things that are hanging down. It's definitely become an aesthetic for 30k. Uh,
Is it
I don't know.
associated with the traitors?
No, no.
Not specifically. No.
They're on various models from the other kits as well. That for a while, yeah, I don't know. They become a thing, and yeah, they're fine. Again, I'm not. They don't offend me. I'm not necessarily a massive fan, but I think you could leave some of them off quite happily. Uh, Power Maul again, easily swapped for something for whatever you want, whatever's going to be cool. And the only issue here potentially is the arms, but then you can cut the arm off at the bottom of the pauldron if you need to and attach another arm, can't you?
Mm.
It shouldn't be too hard. The beauty of plastic, right? I mean, resin's not bad for it, but plastic's so easy to do. He looks super cool. Um, right. The Arachne Quad Accelerated Platform. Not getting much love,
Really?
but I really like it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hence my surprise. I'm surprised how much I like it. I think it's interesting that it's my feeling towards it is slightly altered because of the presence of which we'll come to later, the tarantula. I think the
Yep.
fact that they have design similarities and the idea that you could start having a board with these sort of static-ish defences set up with this sort of familial design feel to them, you could start making quite cool fortification setups that way. Yeah, I'm quite a fan, and it's got some heft to it. I think, yeah, I'm surprised it's had that negativity to it.
Well, I don't know if it's negativity as opposed to it's just an upscale tarantula, therefore I can't get too excited. But I don't know. I think it's got some coolness to it. Um, you've got also kind of maybe because it is a stationary emplacement that some people are just like meh. Putting stationary emplacements on battlefields doesn't always feel right. Like bringing a fortification to a fight, but certainly narratively.
Mm,
You can have some cool kind of attack defender things, and it
absolutely.
looks like, I mean, we've got just the Sakaran. It basically can have, so this is the quad accelerator platform, but there seemed to be a link that maybe we're going to get more of the Sakaran weapons, but I don't know if that's right. But there's going to be other options surely down the line. I mean, they're a cool weapon anyway. So yeah, I like that. It's a big piece of kit as well.
I was just thinking that I wonder if you get the other weapons. I mean, there's a possibility you could get the plasma in
Plasma
particular.
will be awesome.
Plasma, particularly seeing in Legions Imperialis, they've mounted those in that sort of horizontal rather than
Yes.
vertical arrangement, so that would allow them to stack in the way that these accelerator cannons are. The Arcus type turret would be a no,
I don't think necessarily. I think I mean you
not
could
one
put
for money.
no, you could put anything on there. You could put quad las cannons, quad, all kinds of other stuff as well, like bigger weapons. So
Quad,
that's cool.
quad Punisher cannons would be
Well,
insane.
right, but that's cool. Okay, here we go. Saturnine Terminators. They're real. They're a thing. They are this thing. They are big. I sent you a picture from. So they had these models at the Dallas Open, which suggests that that preview was going to be, this was going to be the big drop at that preview,
Yeah,
to have the models then available there, and people were working on them and showing them off, and they do look big. Uh, what are your thoughts?
I didn't like them. I've never been a big fan of the Saturnine Terminator principle and design. Similarly, it doesn't have a nostalgia for me. The Saturnine type Terminator. These early Terminator designs were before I got into the hobby. I was coming into what we now call the Indomitus pattern. Mm, what I did discover, as an aside, the other day watching Arbiter Ian's Saturnine YouTube video, that the term Saturnine apparently was a fan thing, which has now been sort of canonized by being
Well,
used, yeah,
uh, the term Saturnine linked with this style of Terminator
loosely,
was,
apparently.
yeah, it was
It
kind
was
of
a loose link, and it was sort of carried forward, and has now been solidified in that way. And there's actually now obviously a law justification behind what it's about, which is cool. Um, yeah, but this sort of style of Terminator I wasn't a fan of. And then when I saw the leaked images, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not super into these, not feeling it. That changed, and I was going to hold back my full judgment until we saw them. And indeed, seeing the full HD images put forward both in the preview and then afterwards and studying them, and particularly in certain color schemes, I'm like, yeah, actually, I get it. I really want to see them in person. I was skeptical about the anatomy of it and the simple mass that is sitting above, either in line or above the head, particularly the sort of energy coil things that are sitting across the shoulders. I thought that just looks silly, and even some of the weapons, I thought, oh, that plasma thing looks a bit weird and not so sure. But then seeing them in reality, or seeing them in this HD, I'm like, actually, I quite like those. And what makes a massive difference for me is the heads. The head, there's some alternative heads in that kit, particularly typically the Iron Warrior color scheme they've
yeah.
done there has that alternative head, and I think that's a significant improvement for my taste, and amazingly changes the feel of the model, being it's obviously a focus of it. That more traitor leaning head, perhaps.
The Iron Hands one has a real brutal head on it as well.
Agreed, agreed. Yeah,
Those
I think
two particularly.
yeah they stand out for me. As part of that. But yeah, and from being quite skeptical initially, I've been much more impressed seeing them, or much more. I've warmed to them as it's gone on.
Yeah, so the concept of Saturnine Terminators with the big high shoulders, the lack of mobility, I never gelled with them. I have seen many attempts to make them 3D sculpted. There is one, Diverging Realms is the only range that I would even consider buying. I think they're the best. I think these are now up there with those. I have some reservations about them. Um, I think the solution to the stupid shoulder pads of these, like, shield generators effectively, is a clever way around that. I
Yes.
think that if you're going to do this, it's like that. They also feel in the photos you can see the back of the legs. They've got some real heavy like pistons and things to help move them. This feels almost more like Hulkbuster armor for Iron
Mm,
Man than anything else for me. I think the fist balances out the model,
mm,
and I think there's one clear winner in pose, and it's the one that's slightly moving. It's like bent right leg, like looks just that small element there makes it look 20% better than the other two.
yes.
Um, there are aspects of the model. Yeah, I don't know. Again, see the model up close. Maybe it will change. They're fine. I Saturnine as a concept, design like this, I think they've done the best they can, maybe with the limitations of what they were trying to work with.
Mm.
Uh, it might grow on me over time. Um, I know some people. I know Henry, Carter Payne Henry, has kind of been won over, I think, by them. I'm not there yet. We'll see where we get them in hand, as it will. See how they kind of work as a model.
Yeah,
But,
I agree with that. Having them in hand, I think, is going to be quite a big deal. I'd like to see them.
yeah, I mean, I don't hate them. You know, they just look a little bit. When the static ones, particularly, just look a little bit derpy. I don't necessarily mind the plasma. I think when you've got two weapon like long range weapons on there, there's that danger of them looking a bit silly. Um,
And I think that was probably my issue. Now that might be because I'm just used to the silhouette of, power fist and weapon.
mm,
Not common. In fact, I can't think of an example where two ranged weapons are on the Terminator. It does differentiate these. It does suggest that these things are they serve quite a different role to that of your
oh yeah,
Cataphractii, Tartarus, and Indomitus. Um, leans into them being this utter weapons platform, and I wonder if we'll see other weapons. The lack of a bolt weapon is sort of surprising. It sort of makes sense in some way that you're sort of leaning into this. These are from an era where these slightly more esoteric weapons were in play.
yes,
So I kind of get that. I'm slightly surprised because there wasn't the sort of almost proto bolter as an option on this. But again, like I say, it's probably because it's going
yeah,
down that route of being, yeah, exactly, yeah, there's that, and going down the route of it trying to differentiate itself rather than power fist and combi bolter equivalent. Isn't really what it's trying to do. So some alternative weapons might be fun. A sort of a twin auto, a Reaper auto cannon equivalent, or a sort of Storm bolter, the Legion bolter type of thing, Link bolter rather, could be fun. Odd bolter, something like that. Who knows what they might explore?
yeah. So, I mean, because they're slightly older tech that's been redesigned, so they can do whatever they want with them.
Mm,
Um, Again, their introduction, there were some people really kind of against. I think the fact we're going back to the drop site massacre, and then these were dropped in. Suddenly they were all over, and we've never heard of them before. And now, well, technically we have because they're alluded to in a story at least. But kind of why haven't we heard about them before? And it's like, well, unfortunately, that's the only way GW can do these things. We'd never heard of a Leviathan until Leviathan was released, and then there are Leviathans. Um, like they can't restrict themselves to only putting in what was written about in the novels and black books and old lore, because we would have half the range we currently do. So I've got no problem with that. Like, just because something hasn't been written about doesn't mean it didn't exist within that. So I mean, I do think sometimes the heresy community is a little bit precious about its lore like that.
mm,
Mm. There are times to be like, kind of, whoa, hold on. and there are times to be like, okay, cool, you've added something new.
I don't think that's exclusive to the heresy community. I think it happens there, but I remember it happening with the Storm Eagle, for example. In do I mean the Storm Eagle? What was Storm Raven? The Storm Raven, the precursor to the Storm Eagle. When they brought that in, and people, oh, well, we've never heard of this aircraft before. It's only ever been Thunderbolt. And you're like, well, yeah, but that's how these things are going to evolve. And I think there's actually more scope for that in the heresy than there was with 40k, where everything's supposed to be sacred.
Well, I think
That's changed with the current iteration of 40k. I agree with you. It annoys me. I find it seems short-sighted. What do you want then? We want to stick with just Rhino,
yeah,
Land Raider, and Space Marines. You think you
I
would get
think
excited
I,
when
th-
these new
I
things are
think people
introduced.
can be more precious about the heresy story than the 40k story.
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
think I think there is that. But hey, it's all good. We also got a Praetor. So this guy
Yeah,
comes in two poses.
so I've found it fascinating and really entertaining watching a couple of the various sort of chat channels, either in Discords and WhatsApps and things. The reaction when the other poses were shown that you could do with the same kit was fascinating, and I agreed with them completely. It made me really sit up because the sort of poster version, the salamander painted version, um, it felt over the top for me, and that's it to the point where it just took me out of it slightly. Saturnine is already pushing that, and then to see that version, I was like, well, okay, I'm not sure I'm on board with this. And then to see those alternate versions, I was back in, and it was amazing what relatively small differences in both pose and sort of level of ornamentation completely changed my opinion of it. And I thought that version where he's sort of stalking forward, holding the axe in the left hand, I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. This is super cool actually, and I'm really impressed that there's as much variety in one kit like that.
Mm. There's usually like a few parts of a multi-pose kit that are chosen more than the others. It's rare that one look is that much more welcomed. Uh,
Mm.
I don't know many people. I don't think I know many people who are going to build the foot up on a rock version
Mm.
because I think there is a stark difference between the two just on posing and maybe this is part of the problem with Saturnine. Maybe they're static because if you try to make them look too like they're going to move too much, then you lose a little bit of like the realism of what they're going to be. Like
Mm.
when you see people modeling Leviathan sprinting, like those people who do contemptors really close to the ground or jumping over something,
Leaping over a wall, yeah,
rarely feel right to me.
yeah.
You've got to be very careful with how you do that to not break the immersion of what's going on. I think this guy probably suffers a little bit of that.
Mm.
But cool. And then the big guy, the Dread.
Really big guy, yeah.
I I again I'm a little bit confused as to why people don't like this very
Mm.
much. Like people are, oh yeah, quite like the Saturnines now, but that Dreadnought, and I'm like, I mean, the legs, the groin is just a Dreadnought. Like, that's just a Dreadnought.
Particularly a Leviathan.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a bit more like bulbous, but it's still a little bit angular. So you've still got a bit of a yeah, there's like elements of a Redemptor Dread in there, maybe with the shoulder pads particularly, but it doesn't feel too far off what dreads we got in Heresy. Um, and I actually think the shoulder plates on this, if you will, fit much better on this than they
I
do
agree. Yeah.
on thingy. They feel like they belong on this guy. I think they're just that bit's further spread out because you've got more bulk, so they don't feel quite as enclosing. I feel like, and the way they're designed, obviously, that arm can move, and I think that's a big part of the Saturnine.
Mm.
Like they can bend their elbow. And that's about
Mm.
it. Whereas this Dread can move.
Yes. It looks highly articulated. I like the layering that's taking place. I think that it's sort of got a It's got that thing that that all Warhammer does quite well, particularly that in the 30k, 40k setting, of the older stuff somehow looking more advanced than that.
Yes.
And I sort of feel this is doing that quite well. Like the later
Mm,
versions aren't necessarily a step forward. The move into mass
yeah.
production really suffers. I think this sort of the way the armor is layered and suggesting that this is a sort of pinnacle technology, and then goes slightly bizarre in the shoulder pads. And like you say, and the shoulders of this sort of work in some way in this thing. Does it? If it was one of these things that you were 3D printing, would I knock it down, 10-20% so that it was broadly the same size as a Leviathan or possibly a Telemon? Yeah, probably. Does it need to be that much bigger? That isn't necessarily better to me, but equally, I haven't got a problem with it being that size. Um, is it getting on for sort of? Is it starting to tend towards being a knight size? No, I don't think so.
I think it's Telemon kind of size.
Yeah, which I don't. So therefore, I don't hate that.
No, I think the problem is if it's the same size as Contemptor and Leviathan, what's it doing?
Yeah,
Like, why is it there?
yeah,
If it's bigger, at least it has that. Unless you were doing like a siege dreadnought or something like that. So I think the extra size is fine. I really like the Space Wolf version. I think this is James, friend of the show, James Karch. Very much his style.
yeah. That does look great.
The yeah, it really looks fantastic. I think again, I think salamanders. I think it looks good, but I've seen people who don't necessarily like salamanders can have that bit extra going on. Like they're not blood angels, but it's kind of contrasting. So the lava, the the effect on the shoulder plates is a stark contrast to the green, but not everyone's digs that. I like the kind of one scheme color simplicity of the Space Wolves.
Yeah, agreed.
Um,
It's
too big. It's
interesting
going to be
also.
interesting to see as well because we've got two weapons on this. When we get its standalone kit, like what weapons is it going to have?
It's interesting as well. Yes, exactly, because it would look much like the when the plastic contemptor came around. You only had sort of about half the weapons, if that, that ultimately came with a separate weapons, an additional weapons sprue later. There's also the Space Wolves one. I'm looking at it here. Has got obviously it's got the different sort of chest weapons, if you like, but it's also got the different armor trim. It's got the more ornate
Mm,
lightning bolt and halo kind of trim on the
right.
shin pads, for want of a word, around the
Yeah.
feet. So you think, okay, so there's going to be alternate parts there, and it's got that sort of studded, um, the triangular studs down the side of the chest armor as well. So there's
Oh
options
yeah.
here, even in this kit, that there's this sort of thing, and I noticed that was something they mentioned in the preview that there's particularly with the character models, you tend to get these alternative pieces that are purely cosmetic, and they're talking, as I say, mainly for characters where they might have more chains and more of those circular starburst medal type things. If it was wanting it to look slightly more brutal, perhaps more traitor. And then you've got those slightly more ornate versions as well, and maybe something in between, a more plain version. I think that's super cool. It gives you those variety.
Those weapons on the under chest weapons.
Mm.
Do you recognise that shape?
Oh, and I don't for either of them, and I think both of them.
The top one looks like could be disintegrator.
Yes, it's. I think they read out the name in the
Right.
preview, and it's a
Disintegrator
variation
cannon, it
on
says, yeah.
greater. Yeah, it's a sort of.
Oh,
It's a,
photonic incinerators.
there you go. There you go. It's not strictly a
It might be that. It
disintegrator.
might be that. No, no.
It's
There's so hold on. The result battle armor protected by boasting power-hungry weapons such as disintegrator cannon, which would be the big one, heavy plasma bombard, or photonic incinerators. That might be the big weapons. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it is the little weapons. Photonic incin. Cool. Who knows?
Well, I
Um,
wonder if
but
photonic
multiple
incinerators
choices.
are because the shape of the ones on the Space Wolf Dreadnought
Those were
are
ones.
broadly similar to some of those Adrathic weapons that the Custodians get, which I
Yeah.
know are like war crime type weapons. No one's allowed to
Sure.
have them except the custodians, so it's not those. But it's got that kind of feel. They definitely feel other. Um, both weapons are of that nature.
That is super cool. Yeah, they even gave us a whole thing about what Assassinine is, and having a little look at some of the different bits and pieces. The Saturnine Aquila, which is
Mm.
interesting with the single head. But that's cool. For what it is, I think they've done a decent job. Shall we take a break there and come back to talk some more? Right, and we're back. So yeah, brilliant to see all the box stuff nice and clean. But they didn't stop there. They gave us pictures of the new tarantulas with up to 4 different weapons on them.
Did you expect them to go further? When would you not expect?
Uh,
Did you
I
suspect
did
rather than expect?
actually. I
Mm.
thought they were going to give us more than just the box. I thought
Really?
everyone's expecting the box, and I just had the feeling that they weren't. I mean, the box would have been fine, but it would have been half-hour preview.
Mm.
Like, here's the box, cool. So I was expecting a little bit. I don't think I was necessarily expecting this much,
Mm.
which is super cool. And it all adds into like why it was such a good stream.
Mm.
But this was definitely don't worry, guys. This is happening. Like even when the book comes out, it goes quiet for a bit because that's all what happened when the box comes out. There is stuff coming. It's in the
Mm.
works, which again, logically, I mean, we've talked about it. We know stuff's happening because like, they're not dropping it. Like so, they're going to be working on it.
Mm.
But not everyone is quite so down on that ride, as it were. So yeah, the tarantulas look cool,
They do. There's no way around that. Yeah, I thought they cool little design.
and the rapier kits, they're cool. No dude attached to the back.
See them at this size as well, I think is quite nice because we obviously got a hint of this, more than a hint of this, with the Legions Imperialis design
Yes,
of those, albeit in tiny. So then to see them scaled up into the full level of detail and updated design, I'm quite a fan.
they are going to be so much more affordable, um,
Yeah.
and uh, and easy to use. I say without the dude attached to them. You got looks like 4 models,
Mm.
two for each platform with loads of cool bits because the 2 different sets have got different bits and stuffs and doodads and arms and what
But you're
have you.
right. There's so much kit on those guys. I mean, you think what the gunners used to be, it was like we've got an extra little
Yeah,
camera on our backpack, and that was kind of it, and maybe a targeter in the helmet. There's so much kit on these guys. I sort of feel like they could be stand-in, siege consoles or there's
yeah.
certainly enough bits on these that you would say that this is a Master of Signal or something like that.
I
Perhaps not
think
elaborate enough, but it's certainly the basis of.
I think for me it's more you can build these kits and you can save those bits for because at
Yeah,
the end of the day the armor looks to be fairly plain.
true.
But if you buy a character, you can use a lot of bits to convert that character up into whatever you want. Like it's like a
Absolutely.
case of keep the kit around because there's
Hmm.
lots of stuff. It feels like there's more 30k stuff, more and more now, where you're like, cool, I'll put that aside rather than take it back for recycling,
Yeah,
which is cool. And then they threw some Mark II assault marines at us.
yeah.
This is clever. This kit's clever. I mean, A, it looks amazing. Massive axe, brilliant. Massive turbine jump pack, cool. The little extra plate on the front to make it work so that you can
Yeah,
plug any kit into any kit is brilliant as well. You want Mark 3 with these turbines? Cool. If you want Mark 6 jump packs with Mark 2 dudes, cool. Like,
yeah. I
you
personally,
can do what you want.
I'm such a fan of that jetpack style. I'm not a huge fan of the size of the chain axe. It
Sure.
seems quite extreme, and it's more a
Yeah.
trend that I'd seen with the sort of with the close combat weapons in particular. The chief offenders of those being the Sons of Horus specific axes. The
Yeah.
Carceron? Anyway, whatever. The Sons of Horus specific axes. They're enormous, and you sort of think, compared with Justarin previously, you've got these sort of hatchet style axes, Chthonian axes. You thought, yeah, it felt like it was too much of a jump, and I sort of feel that a bit with this chain axe. It's just 10-20% too big, and you could have dialed it back. But I'm splitting hairs. The menace
I,
and the sense of threat from that
mm,
model is brilliant.
I don't mind if it's one chain axe, it's big like that.
Agree.
Maybe it's
Yeah,
a special type of
absolutely.
weapon.
An
But
eviscerator type equivalent thing. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
yeah, I mean the good thing is as well, we've got plenty of options for
Yes.
combat weapon arms, which is super sweet. So it was like cool. I mean, that's a real crowd favorite to drop in there. Then plastic breaches, which
Oh,
you know,
fantastic.
awesome. Like it's the kit, isn't it? It's like, and it's an add-on kit. Like, and that's the beauty of it. It's like cool. We can put that with whatever we need to put that with.
I wonder what will be in that kit because it's presumably going to be. Yeah, I'm just comparing it with the assault weapons kit. You're going to get 10 shields, probably 10 shield arms, or possibly 10 bolt gun arms if they don't already work with the.
Well, they're gonna have the drum bolters, aren't they? Like that's kind
Yeah,
of
the bolters and
so
that, but
yeah,
10 bolters, shields, and arms. I wouldn't have thought that was a kit. I would have thought there might be some other bits in there. I suppose you might get some other weapons. Maybe there's other heads, isn't there? Okay, you could start. Yeah, okay, it starts to get a bit more substantial then, doesn't it? In terms of what you might get in there. It'd be interesting to see how they round that kit out because they
yeah,
packed
for sure.
so much into the melee weapons kit. I would imagine the breacher kit will be similar.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then we got some actual teases. So a Volkite attached to a Cataphractii style Terminator. So was this confirmed to be a character?
Annoyingly, I have now heard conflicting, and I haven't bothered to go back and listen to the
Because
stream.
I
I've heard different opinions on this. I've heard some people categorically say they said in the stream this is from a resin character, and
yeah,
then
I
there's
don't
others who
remember
are
that.
categorically saying this is plastic. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't gone back and re-listened, but I don't remember them saying it was a character. I can't remember what they did say. They kind of alluded to something new. I mean, I want Cataphractii to be upscaled. Am I going to go out and buy any Cataphractii now? Probably not for a bit, because I want to see what happens with that.
Yeah,
Same for Tartarus.
I
Um,
mean, what was sort of almost. I mean, I genuinely laughed, sadly, when they were on the stream and they were showing the scale of these various things, and they had the Saturnine there, and
yeah,
they had a regular Mark II because they just compared the Saturnine with the Mark II, and then they brought on a Tartarus Terminator. It looked so small. It was barely bigger. It was basically the same size as the Mark II.
yeah,
I mean, compared to the Saturnine, it was utterly dwarfed. So you think, oh, okay, that is a problem. Now you can do things to sort of elevate them, literally, for both Cataphractii and the Tartarus. And somehow the Cataphractii's got so much more mass to it, it sort of gets away with it. The Tartarus, though, was looking dated, which is a real shame, particularly when you've got a collection of them and you're like, ugh,
yeah.
I'm happy with those
It
now. But,
is.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. I really want them both. I must admit, when I got the Indomitus, it was like I can't put them into an army
No,
because they make Cataphractii and Tartarus look incredibly stupid because they're so big. But hey, you know, what else? We then got a Martian. So, cloak on
yeah.
there suggests this could be a Skitari.
Yes. Now, what's interesting about that, again, I'm benefiting here considerably from watching Arbiter Ian's little breakdown of this, and he was going through what his reactions were to the preview, and I hadn't appreciated my lore knowledge failed me here that Skitari in the 30k era aren't what we see them to be in the 40k era. They are a little bit more not feral, but they're certainly less codified. And they are more sort of an escorting force, a raiding force that are out doing their independent thing. And that description does fit what you're sort of seeing here, being with a sort of a dust cloak or something like that around it, and the legs suggesting these are sort of long range, fast running type of mechanicum something or other. It's certainly got that feel to it. I think it's quite a cool looking model. If you'd have told me this was for Necromunda, I'd have believed you. I'm slightly
Well,
surprised it's a
yeah,
heresy thing.
definitely has a Necromunda feel about it.
Mm, mm.
The, I think, yeah, Skitari was a catch-all term as well, which doesn't
Yes,
help.
the class, isn't it?
Um,
Yeah. Another
yeah, so
terminology. Sure, yeah, you're right. It is.
lots of cool things. I think having the legs like the insectide kind of legs is a really clever design to make it stand out from everything else. Feels very Talar, Dusk Raiders from Star Wars,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. And then finally, we got a custodian spear, which in another picture has a hand attached. Uh, who knows? Who knows? A rescaling
Be
of custodians.
could could be
Um,
anything. I mean,
the
my
character.
first thought was that it was because as soon as I saw the sort of sculpted shape of the blade, the sweep on it, the sort of
Hmm,
belly on it, if you like, I thought, oh, is this an alternative Valdor? It clearly isn't. I wonder if it was the Apollonian spear. It's not. It's not elaborate enough. But what it might be, because it's similarly, I think the one of the Tribune models they had a similar thing of this. It wasn't as elaborate as Valdor's spear
right.
being. So I wonder if it was that, but yeah, it's clearly something Custodes is coming. Whether it's a character, I would hazard a guess at a plastic character. It is to Custodes perhaps what the Arc Magos is character is for Mechanicum. Sort of a standard type of leader character for the plastic kits that exist. Who knows? Maybe it's a resin. I've no idea. It'd be interesting to see though.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a squad.
Mm,
Who knows? It's good to see that. So, well, we'll get into that in a second, but with the lack of book, I think that suggests that they're reworking how that set of armies work.
mm,
I'd like to see the sisters brought back into a talent um, list,
mm.
even if they do get more models. But who knows? We shall see. And then it is the year of tanks, and they have announced a big one, the Fellblade. Now
I mean,
I've seen people kind of say that this doesn't feel as imposing as the resin one. It's a little bit less brutal. Fine. I'm like, whatever. It's plastic. Right. It's going to be 80 odd quid or whatever it is rather than 200 quid. Uh,
I've seen
what
far
do you
more
think,
positivity about it than I've seen people sort of
Nick?
comment on it and say, yeah, of the two, I think I prefer the aesthetic of this, and the key things being the hatches on the front sides. They've moved to the sort of Demos style, Rhino style circular thing, or Heresy era circular mount, if you like. and the demolisher cannon being in that much more sort of squared off mounting than was before. Less secondary things, perhaps being the fuel tanks on the back, but quite small scale things. Overall, the fact that it's in plastic just trumps all of that. Oh, and there's quite a bit of change, I think, to the front of the hull to make it more unified with the Sikaran and
Sure.
the Sikaran rather, and the Kratos. The thing that got most people agitated were the heavy bolters.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. Um, right. So, yeah, the heavy bolters, essentially, the second set of heavy bolters appear to run through the drum mag of the top heavy bolters. They could be half mags, like ammo in 30k and 40k has never worked. Like, don't worry, don't ever consider about rounds spent and all that. Um, how the inside one works, I don't know. I just don't care.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, yeah,
I just don't care. I like I see people know I can't buy that model because of these sponsons, and I'm like, well, I mean, first off, just put las cannons on it.
yeah.
Like, fine, done. I just in toy soldiers, uh, even if even if I was painting them up to be display and blah 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 and really invested, I just don't think I could care about something like that. I get it. I mean, again, there's been some hyperbole around it. The sculptors, it's like I don't know how else you do quad bolters.
Mm,
Like, can quad bolters work?
mm.
Um, should they take them off? Are we going to start looking at every 30k, 40k thing and say, does this work? Do the physics on this actually work? Because that's a dangerous road to go down.
Mounting a
I
magazine
get it.
externally. I mean, it's all a bit, yeah, for a sponson-based
I
weapon, would you have a weapon magazine mounted externally? Why go down
yeah.
that route of
I
conversation?
Little things annoy certain people. I get it. For me, I just couldn't care.
Mm.
Just whatever. Paint it. Put something else on it.
I love that it's in
Whatever.
plastic. It makes me inclined to. I would now consider getting one. I would probably wouldn't have done before. Um,
Mm.
and I'm also very excited that it's very likely, if not certain, that we will get them in Legions Imperialis, where they fit very well. So that you can play these kinds of, where they fit in
But
that very
it
nicely.
also it also hints towards the glaive and
Yeah,
the other options. I mean, my glaive is possibly the most expensive glaive there is, but it's cool that people will be buying. Well, just as long as the rules add up, that people will be buying these plastic models and not again spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And that was all the models. So there was a lot.
nice.
They gave us a lot, which I think is super cool. And
The
so
real
I expected more than the base box, but I think we got more than I expected.
I didn't expect more than the base box. I thought that was all we were going to get. I thought it would have been a real miss if they'd just done and shown, say, the Mark II, or maybe just the Saturnine and hadn't gone with that any further. I thought we were just going to get the box, so to get all of this extra was quite a surprise. And similarly, for them to start touching on things like rules and stuff like that, I was doubly surprised that they went as far as showing the Assault Marine and the Breacher. I'm really pleased they did, but I'm really surprised that they've dropped that. Obviously, with the caveat that it's quite a bit further away for whatever reason, rather than coming with the Saturnine box. But cool that it's on the radar.
Yeah, exciting times. So even outside of the rules, I think there's just a mega buzz for. Um, I think this is where these having this much info, people can see a path. I
Mm,
think a lot of people need to be told that there's things coming.
yeah,
I think it's a character trait for certain people, whereas some people don't. Like, I can be happy in my assumptions that they will keep releasing heresy things,
Mm.
and this is still going. It's still pushing plastic. I was actually thinking back to, we're at a point now where they can really keep pushing plastic as well. Back before second ed, and before 40K came out the following year, there was this whole thing about, are they going to have enough boxes? They were trying to pump stuff out for 30K in plastic as well.
Mm.
They've gone from 2 plastic ranges and small games to 3 plastic ranges and plus small games, having a reduced resin output. So it's quite a lot for a company to expand that way. And they've moved on in terms of production quantity a significant amount,
Mm.
which is good to see. So and they're on it. They're putting more and more out. So hey, it's all fun. Rules. Should we do rules?
Yes. But
Okay.
what
Or what should we do?
a light touch.
No, I tell you what. Let's do their questions around the new Horus Heresy and do it from there.
Okay.
So I think this was one of the best pages they did on Warcom.
Yeah.
I think this was really sensible, and it's not going to answer everything, but it helped a lot. And some of these were in stream as well, but I couldn't actually watch the stream live. My first interaction with all this information came from the posts. I then went and watched the stream afterwards. So I thought this was brilliant. So we have got new rules. The they're saying that the game, they're happy in general. Warhammer Design Studio are happy rather than whole scale changes. They're going to make improvements. I'm interested where that line is. I'm not.
I thought that. I'm not sure I
I
agree
think,
with the phrase there, but
well,
whatever.
wholesale changes means huge amounts, but it feels like there's a lot of deviation from where we were. But we shall see. So things like challenge, gambits, tactical status, and army selection. Cool. Can I use my current army? Yes. So that suggests that even the militia army was still around. They're putting out PDFs specifically for custodies and sisters until the book comes. Demons, assuming that'll be a PDF, because otherwise, why have they put that out there?
Mm.
Wouldn't be the first time they've not been quite on it, but let's have good faith in what their statement is. We can still use our armies. Cool. So models haven't changed. Books have. All the books are out. Uh, and this is where, like, this isn't a you know this isn't an edition of Warhammer which is subtly changing, because enough's changing in those books with those extra, at least with the extra characteristics that, well, and the weapon profiles. Like there's actually quite a lot of change, so the books have to go.
This is where I
Is
find
it
it.
ideal?
Yeah.
No, no, but other do you want the game to change or not? Well, I mean, we can't judge that yet, and lots of people are judged. I've seen lots of videos, lots of talk about, well, what do these changes mean? Like, we're not going to get into that because we don't know. There is not anywhere near enough information to judge uh, how these changes affect the game, because there's just massive gaps in our knowledge.
Yeah.
But they changed enough. So we're going to get Liber Hereticus, we're going to get Liber Astartes, we're going to get Liber Questoris, which is cool. So knights being pulled into their own thing. Going to get Liber Auxilia and Liber Mechanicum on launch day as well. Is it a lot of money if you're going to buy all 5? Yes. Am I going to buy all 5 straight away? Probably not, because it's a lot of money. So
Am I going to
um,
buy
and
physical copies? I'm not so sure anymore.
sure,
I'm
that's fair
not,
enough.
I hope they do digital ones. I'm just finding that it just gets a bit. I don't really want to throw away the physical copies of these things.
Yeah,
I've
I
still got
get you.
the original black books. I've got the Libras up there. I don't really want to throw those away, but I don't have infinite space. Who does? to keep
Sure.
accommodating these ongoing things. So I kind of want the
I
digital.
would, yeah, with the second edition books, I would quite happily move them on.
Mm,
I don't think they're the items that the black books are. I don't think there's enough
okay.
worth keeping those books for. But it's a valid point. My only thing is I prefer flicking through a real book sometimes for speed than going through the iPad, which I might be using to record my game on and things like that. But we're getting all these rules out the gate, which is the way it should be. Let's face it. Um, for the health of the game, you don't want you know, 20% of your player base not being able to play their army.
No.
We are also getting a the first in a new series of narrative campaign books, Age of Darkness journals, starting with the Isfan 5 Drop Site Massacre Part 1. So journals are what they call their the old world expansions, and journals cover some fluff and alternative ways to make forces. They're based around armies rather than a campaign, a specific fight or place. Journal Tactica, as they're called, because I mean they're relaunching a new game, so maybe that's why. Maybe they will move that way. I would prefer to see, compared to previous edition, I prefer to see more smaller versions,
Yep, agreed.
more smaller narrative books than waiting the 8 months or whatever to get a big one. I think the we don't releases every 5 days, every 3 weeks, but every few months to have something come in, revitalizes everything, lets people know that again, like lets people know that the game's alive, that kind of stuff, but keeps the water a bit fresher. As we should say, so here's the big one. It's been rough. It's been 3 years since the release of Second Ed. Are we on a 3-year cycle?
I
We
think we
don't
are.
know.
I think we are, but
We do.
I think we probably
Okay.
are, but I don't hate that.
I'm not sure that the Specialist Design Studio have the capacity to be on a 3-year cycle.
Mm, yeah, fair.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We could be on a 3-year cycle. We don't have enough information to know whether we're on a 3-year cycle or not.
Mm, no.
Additionally, even if we are on a 3-year cycle, if they feel like this version of the rules is what they want, then the next cycle would be more compatible with the Libras, that kind of stuff. So you won't be buying everything.
Mm,
40k 40k and Age of Sigmar are competitive games that have a lot of releases. I mean, Age of Sigmar over the last 16 days or whatever it is have had sheets coming out for each army that aren't in books. They're not even on the app at the moment. We're getting a new General's Handbook in the summer, and we've had changes, and there's 16 different forces to use, or whatever the number is. It very quickly gets to a point where that information is cluttered, or they've adapted the rules and they've pushed rules and they've added new things where within 3 years you need to tidy the edition up. I don't think Horus Heresy is going to be quite like that. There are 7 or 8 different armies, and most of them aren't primary armies. They can control what they're doing. What a 3-year cycle might then be able to do is bring in um, these journals into something. But I don't, even if we were on a 3-year cycle, I don't think it's the same beast.
mm, no, no, I can see that.
So I'm not too worried.
Because is the old
But
world, I mean,
mm,
this is particularly with the introduction of journal tacticas, there's, and the old world being obviously a fairly obvious parallel, is that on a 3-year cycle? But then is that put forward in the same way that the
uh,
heresy is? The heresy's got a place on the headers of the GW website, on the Warhammer
It's a
website.
mainline game,
Yeah, it's a mainline game versus Old World. Clearly
but it's
isn't.
still run by specialist
Yeah,
design studio
yeah,
who have a smaller resource base than GW Prime. So we don't know. Uh, the other thing I said, while we're kind of on that point, the other thing I saw is I think Broadsword Ollie at Broadsword Wargaming made some kind of joke about like not being invited to an event. Like 3 years ago, yeah, I was there. Now I'm not even invited, which I think was just a joke,
mm,
like very tongue in cheek. And people saying, "Well, where's the where's the big reveal?" Like second edition was a major thing for Heresy.
yeah,
They were going plastic, and they had to be able to back that up. They've done that. They don't need to bring the audience in like they had to last time. There's no need for the big launch. Like Age of Sigmar doesn't get a weekend launch thing like that. 40k doesn't. They might stay open late or do some things, but it's not the same beast. So I don't think there's anything to read into that. 3 year cycle, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm not. I wouldn't be putting my mortgage money on it.
no, no.
Cool. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a logic to that, and I think that, yeah,
yeah, cool. So Talons of the Emperor are going to get their book straight away, with a range of legacy PDFs coming out in the next few months to deploy classic miniatures and factions from their collections. So this might be where we get the demons. We might have to wait a little bit.
yeah,
Who knows? Can I use the new models in any region? Cool. Put that in there. Make sure people know exactly what's going on. That's fine. Whatever. Can I paint all the models in one box? Yeah. Cool. Are there new models on the way? Of course, there are going to be new models on the way, but again, why not spell it out? And they're going to be in English, French, and German. Just those little bits, though, just alleviate some of that hassle. They're questions they know they're going to get. So why not get ahead of it? Um, and
I thought
and
they
I'm
were
sure
nice.
there are.
They were pleasingly straightforward answers as well. I thought they were just nice.
Yeah, there wasn't.
There was like
That was just
alphabet
an
compatible.
information. Yeah, no, that's very cool. And then we had top five rules. So challenges. And again, these are all we haven't don't have the context of the game system in which to view these.
Mm,
The way challenges currently work, there are issues with. There are going to be changes to challenges. We don't really know what this means. There are um, a suite of options for high-level characters involved in challenges to outfight, outthink, and outmaneuver their opponent. These hard-fought duels capture the feel of dramatic showdowns from the Horus Heresy novel series, as well as increase the usefulness of these epic heroes to your battle plan, and they're great fun. Seems to make out that being challenged out if you're a single character might not be as kind of restrictive
mm,
as it was before. I think it's going to be interesting to see that because that is kind of a potential issue in the current game. Army building. Fewer limitations on army composition, allowing you to basically to bring what you want to make your force as, and allied detachments. Cool. But your leader, but perhaps less. There are still benefits to bringing some ubiquitous, perhaps less specialized units to the field with bonuses to your leaders and battle line infantry if they're taken as part of a balanced force, but no penalties for more unusual armies. So they're moving to a system we see more in other games. So you can take what you want, but if you take things in combination or in certain formation, then they're going to have a benefit to your army to um, to provide you that way. Uh, Is that much different than the way no negatives is a fundamental difference from some of the rights of war,
yeah.
but then plenty of the rights of war didn't have any real negatives. So you know, is this going to be more abusable? Uh, in theory, most of our games are played in a narrative style. People shouldn't be looking to abuse them. Some people do. I suspect there's going to be rules in place that restrict, like the rule of three wouldn't be a bad thing. Well, I suppose, yeah, within reason, like the ways around it, I suppose. But
How have you
if
seen the
if
general
the
reaction?
sorry,
How have you seen the general reaction to this?
fear
Yes, I've
that
seen this be
that
quite. People are quite nervous about this.
so I think there are other ways to do what Rights of War do.
Mm.
There are ways to have characters unlock abilities for certain units. So like a what's the like a vigilator can give allow snipers to score or something like that, that kind of thing. It's simple, but you could do that across the whole line. So you're bringing characters that allow certain things or what have you. You can have there are there are various ways. Age of Sigmar has a system where you take a hero and they're allowed to bring four other units with them, and they're restricted on what units they can bring with them into an army. So you're building. So if you take a wizard, say, then they maybe haven't got access in their little detachment to some of the more elite combat troops. They may taking the more basic troops and maybe some shooters or something like that. Whereas if you take the all-out cavalry guy, then he has more cavalry options than that. So again, there are you can bring whatever you want, within that structure, but who knows? There are ways. There are ways to recreate aspects of what's already in 30k. So, you know, who knows? It says here drop pods are returning to the game, so that suggests that they're going to tone down the ability to intercept in whatever form that is as well, which
That's
is
an interesting
cool.
interpretation. I wasn't sure
I
how to
mean, at the
interpret
end, sorry, how to interpret what the drop pods?
that statement. I wondered if that just meant that it's going to become generally more accessible outside of a right of war.
Yeah, maybe. Um, yeah, could be both.
'Cause I thought, well, they haven't gone away, and I can take
Yeah,
them now in a list. That's not what happened. That's the only way. I
but
was just
people
thought,
don't because they get shot off the
yeah,
table.
yeah,
And that's the reason people don't take them is
mm,
because I come down and get shot to pieces.
mm.
There is uh, again a potential issue around deep striking coming in from reserves in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the thing to remember with this force, like how you select your force, is you can put restrictions on yourself. You can put restrictions in your game group. Events can put restrictions in, or if you want to go the other way, you can add more bonuses in. So it's one of those things. GW, I've heard people complain about GW's narrative supplements before, saying they're doing a thing which doesn't need doing in terms of telling people how to be narrative.
Mm.
When unfortunately, I think it's been proven that unless you're the kind of person who thinks that way, like, oh, we can do this, do that, then people do need to be shown and need to be allowed to do things.
Mm.
Uh, Lots of people in the heresy community do play around with army selection and things like that, and and you can do that. Any of these books, none of this has to be played exactly how it is. Uh, Particularly around things like army building your army. I think that's a major thing. Things like scenarios might mean that the extreme builds struggle, and you're
Mm.
going to
Mm.
struggle, which means you can still do them, but there meme lists in 40k are meme lists for a reason. They rarely do well at events, um, but a themed list can do well. So
And I think
yeah,
the introduction of these
tactical status.
tactical journals could be interesting because I think the tactical journals could throw
Yeah,
that around a bit. where you suddenly get these newer
for sure.
things coming in that are messing that around.
Yeah, and even as we go down, even other stuff as well. So tactical status. So there are multiple statuses that are now in play. So pinned, suppressed, stunned, and routed. Now I've seen, I think it was Perfect Pete on, I can't remember what the YouTube channel's called now. It's gone, but someone was thinking that these are like kind of levels of being pinned. So they would go up like once you've got more, you become like almost like a vehicle damage chart.
Yeah.
I think there's clues in here as to the fact they're not. So pinned reflects a unit has been forced to take cover in the face of overwhelming firepower or the sudden crack of a sniper's rifle. Cool. So who knows how they're going to do it, but say weapons with a pinning ability. Suppress reflector unit that is distracted and confused by heavy enemy fire, environmental effects, or psychological warfare. Sounds very different from pinned.
Mm.
The the effect might not be majorly different, but it's being definitely being caused by different effects. So environmental effects or psychological warfare, suggesting army rules, particularly environmental effects, suggesting that there might be things within the scenarios and battlefields and things like that that can come into play. Heavy enemy fire. I mean, that could be a generic rule that certain amount of hits taken, or it could be again a rule attached to certain weapons like autocannons, things like that. We don't
Mm.
know, but it reads to be a very different triggering mechanism than pinned. Uh, Stunned reflex unit rendered insensible or stopped in its tracks by the sheer force of an impact, explosion, or other battlefield event. Again, like this could be being, you could see stunned being the stun rule being attached to certain barrage weapons, um, template attacks, things like that. I mean, this is guesswork, but there's enough in there to suggest something along those lines. And then routed, reflex units suffered a catastrophic reversal. It must fall back from the. Cool. Yeah. Broken. Routed, broken,
Mm.
roughly. But I think they're doing different things, which is cool. Now the question is how they link in to the new stats as well. So we are we are in a step towards Necromunda, maybe more than first edition.
Yeah, I
We've
would
got
say.
leadership, cool, willpower, and intelligence. So I'm aware that I think, maybe bring Andy Hoare's influence up, maybe too much, attribute it too much.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, the guy's in charge, so I'm sure there is an influence there. But there are other rules writers in here, in this thing, and um, I have no doubt that that there's an environment in SDS to look back at old stuff. Um, a Necromunda used these, and Necromunda probably looked back. I think that maybe this looked at how it's gone down in Necromunda and has lent across that way a little bit because Necromunda's doing very well. People like it. And they're not overly used. It's not like you're constantly diving into your willpower stat or something like that. But they use cool for like things like breaking, don't they? Like coming under fire, taking hits. Okay, are you cool enough? Are you with it enough to maintain your to not be rattled, as they say on this? That's a good word for it. Willpower. They've already suggested things like psychic powers,
Well,
leadership for rallying, maybe.
this is why I think all of these are a good
Sorry.
thing. This is why I think all of these are a good thing. I just think it allows that extra differentiation. It means you've got different legions
Yep.
can do different things, different certainly different consoles and specialists can do different things. And you think, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I'm a fan
sure.
of this. I don't think it's going to be too onerous because I just think you're going to use them. It's there when you need it, but
hasn't.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to be overly onerous.
No, yeah, like even leadership wasn't used. So leadership was used for your psychic, over history has been used for psychic test breaking, specific weapons. Not much else actually. You rolled it a lot, but you only rolled it for 3 or 4 things.
Mm.
Um, and some of those things were very different from each other. Um, Now you could look at intelligence as being, if you've got objectives around activating stuff or searching for things, like maybe intelligence becomes part of that. You know, say willpower doesn't necessarily just mean psychic. It could be going out into adverse conditions, things like that. Who knows? People better than I making these decisions. Uh, I like the fact that Primarchs could go well into double figures, which suggests there's ways to adjust these.
Mm.
Maybe I'm wrong,
I
because
wonder
what's
as
the point
well.
if you're going well into double figures? If it's so you roll 2 dice and got to roll under a target, what's the point in being above a 13? Unless there's either a comparison, maybe at some point you're comparing willpower stats for some psychic powers, things like that, or rolling off and adding, or there are things that can modify those stats. So that's cool. But when we tie that into weapons, we'll talk about weapons very briefly. So weapons have been completely reworked. So we've got range, firepower, which seems to be attacks. RS, what's that? Strength. I think I'm
Uh,
trying to remember now. Blimey. Uh, yeah, AP suggests it's got no plus or minus. Suggests it works as the current AP works, and then
RS is
damage,
RS is ranged strength.
range strength. There we go. And then special rules and traits attached. So again, like nice and easy. It's a bolt weapon. It's an assault weapon. Special rule is a pistol. Cool. Laid out, quite clear. We got the Saturnine Disruption Fist. So initiative modifier, attacks modifier, strength modifier, AP damage. Strength modifier +2 for a big fist like that doesn't seem a lot, but the game's changed.
Also,
Damage 3
it suggests that
suggests,
because when you're in that armor, the base strength is already quite high.
yes, potentially, yeah.
I mean, we don't know,
Yeah,
but
you could be strength 6 or 7 base, yeah. Was traits power, cool. Damage 3 um, suggests that wounds are going to be probably going up, I think, in terms of some characters, things like that, or vehicles, or what have you. But allows, so what these do with the leadership, core willpower, intelligence, is they've increased the design space massively
absolutely.
in this game. So you can do much more with your mental stats. You can do much more with your weapons. The initiative was one of the least used stats because it's binary. Are you higher or lower? Well, it's not quite binary because it could be equal, but it's very definitive. Um, I'm initiative 4, you're initiative 4. Cool, we're strong at the same time. Oh, you're lower, I'm higher. Brilliant. Uh, Bringing in an initiative modifier, which can happen in old world quite a lot, means you have to, in theory, means you have to start thinking about how much initiative is that weapon worth, things like that. My only potential issue with that is, well, if I don't think I'm going to be going first, I might as well just take the highest initiative penalty. And
Mm.
maybe that's something that cycles round in a meta. But if I'm not striking at initiative -1, um, do I then just go ahead? But again, that's a balance thing that has to be worked out. Damage and then special weapon traits. Basically, it means, like, let's take Power Fist, Thunderhammer, Power Axe, Power Sword. You have potential to make all of those 4 options worth taking.
Mm.
on a
Mm.
dude, because power sword striking at initiative or initiative +1, and it's, it can do some damage, and the damage is less, but I'm going first. Can I get in and do those hits? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can. And also, there's points attached to all these as well, isn't there? So power axe. Okay, I'm only at initiative -1, like, which means maybe I'm going before power fist and thunder hammers. So again, I can get in with some slightly heavier attacks. But if someone's taking a weapon that's not minus initiative, I'm going after them. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk before I consider special rules in there. Um, you know, if power fist strike before thunder hammers, then you need enough differentiating there, because otherwise you just hit another cliff edge,
Mm.
and that's going to be the bit that is like, how well have they done that?
Massive
Because
task they had to do to go through all the weapons. I mean, that must have been a huge undertaking.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's going to be, initially at least, there's there's going to be weapons that stand out,
Yeah.
because there always are, and it's really tricky to not have that. But at the moment, you know, if I'm like Thunderhammers and like strength 8, because the damage also suggests that doubling out won't be a thing, because the damage difference in damage becomes like, why are you doing that if you can double out? Um, like, what's you're losing a bit of that advantage, like that. Rather than doubling out, you're dealing this damage. Also allows you to have really high strength attacks that don't deal the damage, really low strength attacks that deal high damage, because you know, they're stiletto knives, they're poisoned, they're, what have you, and vice versa. So again, massive design space in there to make everything work. And if they're not doubling out, that doesn't mean instant death's necessarily gone, because you can have special rules that do instant death still. But I think I could see that doubling out's gone.
Yes. And it might be that doubling doubling out in that sense, doubling out causing instant death might have gone, but it might be that double strength gives you +2 damage, for example. I don't know, but whatever it might be. There might be another way of doing something
Oh yeah, I
similar,
mean,
but not quite
absolutely.
the same.
But I almost think that would probably come down to weapon
Yeah.
special rules. Like, there's so much that can be done around here now with weapons, that they can really make weapons stand out from each other. It means you're checking up weapons more often until you get used to it. Um, Particularly when it comes to things like Legion weapons, because they've got to make them different enough to be worth taking, or considering.
Mm.
But there's potential here for a lot of cool stuff to go on. Uh, who knows? And they maybe wounds don't go up that much. I wouldn't be surprised to see character wounds go up a little bit.
Yeah, I would have thought
They
so.
might
Yeah.
not.
Not individual troopers, but
I
yeah, see them going up.
No, they haven't shown us um, a ranged kind of anti-tank weapon.
Yeah.
We don't know if tanks are going to maintain armor values or wounds, and armor, but again, there are ways. I don't have Essentially, whole points are wounds, and armor values are toughness.
Mm.
The difference being, you can have multiple armor values on a target rather than a singular toughness. And vehicles had a damage chart which intercepted between armor value and glancing is the other slight difference. But essentially, that comes down to the damage chart anyway. Equal or beat their wound roll, you wound them. Equal or beat their armor value, and you either glance them or roll on the damage chart. If you remove that, don't necessarily have a major issue. Again, you can have a basic rule which suggests that if you have a vehicle and you are firing into the flank, you get +1 strength. Firing into a +2 strength. Oh look, land raiders ignore this rule.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, as a off the top of my head way of doing it, like you could have things like that. I'm not that worried either way. If it's handled the right way, it will be fine. And essentially, that keeps facings without having to worry too much about like you know having multiple facings. You can build in something to it, but it then cleans up not having to try and work out. Well, I suppose it's just different. It cleans up the difference between dreadnoughts and vehicles and makes it a bit of a smoother
Yeah,
thing either way.
it's what Legions Imperialis does over a facing thing. It's got a similar thing. I think it's obviously
Yeah,
similar
it does.
because of the scale, but it's a similar principle. And perhaps having something like well, we don't know, do we? We're just speculating. It'd be quite cool to have something where you've got
No,
degrading
yeah.
performance, but who knows what that's going to be? There's no hints of that yet. I look forward to when they do because we're going to be
They've also
now.
in 40k and Age of Sigmar they've reduced the effect of degrading profiles as well.
Mm,
So I could see it happening, but it's not as bad as it used to be. I think it's clear now that SDS are also much like mainline. They're looking at all their other game systems and saying, what can we steal from here? What works? What doesn't work? Can we find a way to do this thing, and where can we find a way? And it doesn't matter whether that's one of their current game systems, whether they're old game systems. They're trying to problem solve around that. And back when Heresy stayed with the old 40Ks with the well, technically built off fifth edition, Andy had said, well, I talked to him at some point and he corrected me on a few things, and then had said, we get this opportunity now to look at what 40k is doing, and da, da, da. And why wouldn't you do that? Like, uh, all the games look at stuff, borrow stuff, and they generally don't just borrow it; they adapt it into what they want, and again, they don't look at everything. Like, it's not like I don't think we're going to get all of Age of Sigmar's command points. Could we get command points in this in a different way?
mm,
I
mm.
don't have a problem with that. Like, there's ways that it could work. Um, like, we don't know anything really. They did talk. There was some stills that talked about that there was a reaction
Yes.
within one of the still frames they put online. I can't remember where it is now.
It
I
might
should
have
have highlighted
been
that.
as part of the preview of the Istvan. There's quite a lot revealed
It
in that
was.
because there's also
It
some bits
was.
about
There seemed to
being
be
able.
some stratagems get.
Yeah, it looked like
Yeah,
there was a sort of
structure emitters
variant
go.
whirlwind in there as well, where they'd taken a marine tank and put one of the
Yes.
molecular turrets on it. And similarly, there's a point in there about a particular type of a sort of battlefield coordinator squad, and it says a note, bit like the exemplary battle
Yeah.
thing. Notes on models. You can use the rapier crews for this. You think, yeah, that's
Yeah.
super cool. But how can you take your existing models and use them in a different way? Love that.
Yeah. I'm just scrolling through now, trying to find because reactions are something. Here we are. Okay. Special rule allows a model to use an advanced reaction to arrive from reserves in close proximity to an enemy unit. That only contains what special can be used: concealed ambush, advanced reaction, concealed positions. Now this could be within specific. Well, it probably is specific to the campaign, so it's probably a campaign one. This is allowing people to arrive within. Here we go. Ready player must select one model. It's not within their opponent's deployment zone within 6 inches of the unit that triggered this reaction, at least 5 away from any enemy model and 1 inch from any battlefield edge. Now, if we're going to extrapolate that and take a bit of a leap, admittedly, that sounds very much like the way 40k and Age of Sigmar do their dropping in. That there's a range which you can't drop in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could be completely wrong on that, but that seems to suggest that this changes how far away you can drop in because it's a close thing or whatever. Yeah, as concealed a concealed position. But that's cool. Like, I don't mind. Like, deep striking and interceptor is one of the things in this edition that hasn't is not right.
Mm.
It
Mm.
doesn't work smoothly. There's no easy fix. There's like multiple things that would have to be changed. So going back and restarting it is not a problem for me. I have no problem with stuff being able to charge from Deep Strike, but it needs to be not as automatic, and your ability to defend against it needs to be not as potentially devastating, because it becomes very one of us is having fun and one of us is not.
Yeah, quite.
And to be fair to Age of Sigmar and 40k, they've used a system of not being able to essentially drop in within 9 without a special rule, but still be able to charge, and some units have bonuses to charge and things like that, which means that you can set up, if you really don't want something to charge you, you can set up interceptor, shielding units, things like that. There's something you can do, and yet it's still worth sometimes the person deploying that way. So yeah, who knows if it's going to work like that? But I'm, I suppose this. I was reading this stuff, watching this video, and for me, actually, there was a bit of relief in second edition coming to an end. I
Okay.
don't think it was a bad game. I enjoyed it. Maybe it's just the timing around. Essentially, second edition. My interaction with second edition occurred immediately. Just after James was born, and has gone through 3 years,
Mm.
and I haven't been able to play the same way. I haven't been able to read in the same way and digest the stuff in the same way. But there were aspects of the game that, as I reflect on it, didn't make me think, oh, I really need to get that to the table and play it as much as other games have at times.
Mm.
I think there were too many issues around reactions. I think and I felt this way with a sort of similar feeling to Old World, actually, where I'm like, I can see where I like this game, and I can see the barriers it puts in front of me.
Mm.
Can I play it and enjoy it? For sure. Does it make me think? I've hardly played at the gaming club, the second edition Heresy, and I've not really tried. Um, and I think that's, for me personally, is a statement on how I feel about second edition. It was fine. It was serviceable. It didn't flow maybe the way I would want it to flow.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know how you feel looking back at second edition.
I felt like the introductions to it made it a more entertaining game for the way I enjoyed playing it. Specifically, it was the introduction of reactions, and I thought there was
Mm,
a general sort of cleaning up. I mean, if you sort of compare Legion rules compared to how it rolled before, I sort of felt like that was simpler, but I felt there was a sort of a laying out problem. I found the sort of special rules, the nature of special rules in first edition. I remember printing out all the special rules for both weapons and just generally, and having them on A3 sheets at a friend's house, and we were pinning them up on his kitchen cabinets so that we could look at them without having to constantly open up the books and look them up. Now, obviously, that changes as you learn the game, and quick reference sheets and stuff helped, but that was a problem, and that sort of went in the right way, but it was still a problem in second. So that's a downside which I would hope might get addressed and made easier. But I did enjoy the addition of reactions. I thought that rather than a wholesale change where it becomes an activations based type of thing, if you're keeping down the route of complete side has a go and then the other side has a complete go,
mm,
I thought the reactions was a nice mechanic for that, and I preferred it to the stratagems arms race that you saw in other games, like mainly 40k. Really had that. So in general, I
sure.
have quite fond memories of it. As you said, I didn't play a great deal just purely because of timings of the whole thing. But when I did, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I tended to prefer smaller games over bigger games. I didn't think it scaled
Sure.
massively well. But
Sure.
let's see what third brings.
Yeah, so for me, it was things like reactions are cool. Having played a few games, it was it was more. I was like, it was the things like, well, I'm never going to fire my Space Wolf guns because I'm going to be running and then charging. So
Mm,
why am I going to give you a chance to shoot me back? And most people were taking shooting reactions. It's like, okay, cool. Do I want to bring my stuff in on the side and then get attacked? Oh, you're bringing a deep strike. Okay, how can I guarantee stopping a deep like protecting a unit? Oh, I can't. Okay, unless I literally wrap it in a circle with dudes, and it was like there were frustrations within like the execution of reactions. The principle's fine. I was very much like reactions were one of the big things for me that needed to be changed if we kept closer to second edition than probably we are. Things like dreadnoughts were, I mean, dreadnoughts were a minor thing really, but it was a frustration. Um, Super heavies, tanks in general, unless you were a big tank, like you just had to accept that they were dead quite early on in a
mm,
game, unless you had lots of them. Uh, Yeah, there was something just like again, I don't want it to sound like it was a terrible game and I hated it. Like, it's not the case, but it wasn't those things that got me niggled me to a point where it was like, okay, I just generally chose to play something else.
mm,
Um, and be interesting to see with third what happens. It would be interesting to see how much of a change it is. Took a while, and maybe this is part of it. Maybe yeah, we went up to the. I was trying to read the book. Went up to the weekend. Got to play a bit there, but baby was brand new. Those first few weeks were like trying to get him to feed properly and things like that. And we almost got, put on a feeding plan, which meant we were doing this, that, but and then you don't get that start of that momentum.
mm.
So maybe it was my circumstances played into that. Oh yeah, I went to some events. I had some fun. Um, Primarchs, I think, were another problem in second edition. You know, um, it was someone put a Primarch down, and I'm like, okay, cool. Can I deal with that? I'm not sure I can. Uh, is that my fault for army construction? I think there was an issue with um, Primarchs in big units, unless you had like 10-man Lascan squads to really whittle them down. Not necessarily can I deal with that actually. It was, is this going to roll over me, or am I going to be able to challenge him out, get a load of hits in, that kind of thing? Again, there seemed to be some fairly kind of there were moments in games, there were aspects of games where it was like, okay, this is going to happen. Can you do anything about it? Well, yes or no. There's no like, well, I could try this and I can try this. And it was like, okay, this is, I can whittle it down and then I can beat up on him, or no, he's just going to walk into me and I just have to leave him to do his thing, and that's fine.
Mm.
Um, and maybe people feel very differently from me on that. As I say, not terrible, but not didn't drag me in.
And I think, I mean, they've already touched on some of those. I mean, I found challenges sort of took me out of it a fair bit. So hearing that that's going to be adjusted, I think is going to be interesting to see how they do that. Hopefully, it's not something that's become. I mean, there's a suggestion it almost becoming this sort of mini game within a game. That doesn't sound like something that necessarily is all that speedy. And I've generally found that the faster a game can be played, kind of the more fun it is, the easier it is to get into it. When it starts getting bogged down, it can be uh, tough. So cautiously
Yeah,
optimistic about that. But so it sounds like they're addressing things that seem to be a fairly obvious problem, or no problem, or lack of. It just wasn't as fun in the in second edition. yeah, hopefully that is the route they take.
Oh yeah, I actually wondered with the challenges. I wondered whether there was more stuff around accepting and pushing people forwards on challenges,
Mm.
but which would be a really interesting thing to see if they play with. But yeah, I don't know. I say it won't be that long now till release day. We're going to get updates. There's probably going to be an update on this before we put this episode out, detailing some aspect of the game. We're going to find out most of the core rules, I think, before the game's released. So, um, yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. And scenarios, I think scenarios will play a major part on
I
it,
agree
and
with that.
interaction with objectives. And I say, it feels like in there that maybe scenario rules around environmental stuff might play a bigger part as well, which I think in the core, like the base game, will be a good thing because it will lean towards a more narrative style of gaming. But we shall see.
It's an exciting
There's a
time,
lot going on
and I do think that
for sure.
energy is starting to build. I hope the timing is such that that is sustained, and I think it probably is. I think the timing means that hype, if you like, or the excitement will probably build and be sustained through to the point in which it launches and after, which is nice. Unlike something where you have the hiccup like they have with Legions, where that the momentum behind that got knackered. Um, Hopefully that won't happen here. I don't see any reason why it should have been something like that. I think we would have probably heard by now. But I think that it's looking quite good. I mean, 20,000 people joined in for that preview, and that's the people that joined in directly, not including people who were watching it through via other routes, watch-alongs and that sort of thing. I mean, that's a fair chunk of people. Suggests that the excitement is already fairly high.
Yeah, for sure. And it's gonna be really cool. We've got an event going on late October. Um, Tickets will be up soon. I should have mentioned this earlier, but it's gonna be third edition, and
Yeah.
heaven knows what I'm going to do. It might have to be very light on the campaign side of things, just to allow people to really get settled into the game. But yeah, we shall have to wait and see on that one. I think exciting times. Cool. Should we leave that there? Because we've
I
been
think we've
talking a little
covered
while.
all of the basis of that, but I mean, yeah, it's going to be exciting. I'm actually looking forward to jumping in with all the latest stuff, but I think we've covered that as thoroughly as is reasonable.
Diamond. Cheers, Howard. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Imperial Truth podcast. Before we go into like the normal outro stuff, very aware that information started dropping for new edition. I made the decision not to try and keep up, not to try and have a running commentary of what's going on there, because for starters, when do we then put our episodes out, or do we put loads of episodes out? That's not going to happen. You know this show. And second, it's all partial information. So we'll come back next episode. We'll hopefully have a lot more information, and we can kind of talk about it with maybe a touch more knowledge of how it's all going to work. But we'll have to see. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just waffle on. So yeah, we're going to leave that. Excited for 3.0. It should be really cool. Secondly, to that, I delivered the charity prize the other day. Luckily, I happened to be driving um, within miles of the winner's house, which was say super lucky. A detour out of my way on a trip up to Nottingham actually, but that's worked out. Hopefully, once they're in a display, we're going to get some pictures of that, and I can share them on the socials. And we've talked to Abigail's Footsteps as well, and there is going to be a cold cot going into whichever hospital needs it. We're not precious about where it goes, so we've basically said, do what you know. You're the experts. Um, you know where it may be more needed than elsewhere, or what have you. So when we get that information, that all sorted out, we'll pass that on as well. I just want to say thank you again for everyone for if you donated or shared or what have you, just commented on pictures for the charity event. I've had a couple of those people say, "What's the next one?" I want to put it on hold for a while, and we'll see what's going on. As I say, it's very much not my comfort zone organising people like that, especially 18 people. So we'll have to play around with that and see what happens. Now, I'm sure there was loads more information that I was going to put on here. Well, we have got an event. There is an event late in the year. There's an event. I'll have to double check the dates. It's just not sticking in my head for some reason. And there is almost a pack. This third edition announcements put a bit of a kibosh on that. Not only because we don't know what the rules are, we don't know how involved it is, how quick it's going to play, those kind of things. Obviously currently there's this real kind of drive for 4 game events over 2 days. This is a multiple day event, 2 day event, but maybe the new game plays, 75% of the time of the current game. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe even if it does, we stick to 4 games. Who knows? So I'm kind of waiting for that information. And then there's also a fair bit of information about the location of the event and the setup around that. So we're going to get that out to you. So I will share that on the socials. We'll put it up. I think we'll put it up on the event page that's been set up. And when that comes around, please help share that as well. That would be great. I'm sure there was so much other stuff that I wanted to say that I need to make better notes. There was certainly stuff at the top of the show, and after we finished recording, I was like, oh, I forgot to talk about that. Maybe I'll drop that in at the end, and now I've forgotten, which is typical me. We all know what I'm like by now, I would think. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there on that notice. I am working on some more author interviews. We had one planned for this episode and it fell through. Timings didn't work out. We'll try and get that done. So there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. Being away at UK Games Expo, I was away in Nottingham watching the cricket for a day and a bit, and I was away another day after that. And I've got a family, so I've got to spend some time around them. Whether they like it or not, frankly. So you know what it's like as you get older. These pressures become more and more, and trying to fit everything in just doesn't always work. So we'll have to see how this month's going to go. But yeah, if you do have any feedback, if you do have any questions, any thoughts about third edition, any questions about third edition, as I say, we're not going to get into too much kind of wishy-washy stuff. It's not, we go on tangents with that, but we try and base it in a logical thing and talk with some kind of, I don't know, like not too dreamlike, but try and keep it rooted in something. But yeah, obviously it doesn't always happen. I will admit that. But if you've got any questions, any topics, any feedback, then please get a hold of us. If you've got anything specifically hobby related, maybe the Howard you want Howard to talk about more than me, maybe. I get it, it's fine. But they can all those questions come through me as well. Greg at theimperialtruth.com. If you like the show, please tell other people about it. That's really good. We want to try and get particularly as we get into a new edition, get more people involved. Get a real buzz going around, and it's a great game. It's a great system for all that I talked in the show about maybe not being as into second edition for all those various issues. It's a great environment within game and out of game to take part in. And if you like us, maybe other people like us as well. If you really like the show, then we do have a Patreon. You can support us there. It's literally a tip jar. There is nothing extra to be gained. All the content I put out is free. The Patreon is purely used as a tip jar, but it does help pay for hosting and things like going away to events. In terms of running events, I try not to lose money doing them, but I run events at places, so I have to fork out for hotels and time off work, and so I'm not begging for money. Please don't think that, but that's what the money goes in to help with. When we get stuff sent from GW, sending it on to Howard, splitting it up, that kind of thing. It's not a huge amount of money, but it all helps with that. So I'm eternally grateful for all of you people who've ever done that. If you want to help us and you don't want to do the Patreon, that's absolutely fine. If you're in the UK or over this side of the pond, you can order your toys through Element Games. There's a link in the show notes. We also have a link for GW's merch store as well. If you're looking at maybe some of those Joy Toy figures or T-shirts, then you can use our link to go through that as well. And that's about all with that, I think. I don't know what we're going to talk about next episode. I suspect it'll be more third edition stuff. We'll have to see what else is going on and who else we can get hold of. And I'll sit down with Howard and we'll have a little chat. There's always ideas in Howard's head, whether we can do those ideas or not. There's always ideas in Howard's head. So yeah, feel free to get hold of us. I'm really waffling now, so I think we're just going to leave it there. I'm sure there's something I'm missing. I'll probably remember as soon as I've posted the podcast. I will try and make a note of anything I've missed out on. Anyway, until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.